Chen Hao looked at the technologically advanced TV on the wall, and the content inside left him bewildered. Yesterday, the Lord-level monster, the Black Crown Golden Eagle, hovered over our base city for 3 minutes before leaving. The cause of the hovering is currently under investigation, causing several passers-by to be injured. He has been sent to the hospital for treatment, and so far, there have been no deaths. This. Did he catch up with time crossing? Keywords of the novel. People are devouring, I can copy and synthesize without pop-ups. People are devouring, I can copy and synthesize the complete TXT collection download. People are devouring, I can copy and synthesize the latest chapters to read. Chapter 1. Wake up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Wake up. The boundless darkness enveloped Chen Hao's consciousness, as he felt as if he had sunk to the bottom of the lake while drowning, leaving only a powerless struggle and despair. After an unknown amount of time, Chen Hao seemed to hear a faint sound coming, as if he had grabbed a life-saving straw and struggled desperately. A glimmer of light slowly appeared before his eyes, and he struggled desperately forward, rushing towards the approaching glimmer of light. In the clean and white ward of the People's Hospital of Ian District, Yangzhou City, Jiangnan Bay City, lies a young man of 18 or 19 years old. At this moment, the young man's eyebrows furrowed slightly, and his knife-like face seemed to be twitching faintly. Suddenly, his eyes suddenly opened, as if he wanted to sit up for a while, but his hands and feet seemed to be a bit uncomfortable. After struggling a few times, the young man still couldn't get up. Helplessly, he had to give up his ideas and quiet down. After calming down for a while, the young man's eyes caught sight of the high-tech TV embedded on the wall. His pupils suddenly shrank, revealing a look of shock, surprise, and confusion in his eyes. On the bed, this is our protagonist. Chen Hao. At this moment, I am secretly complaining. Mommy, what is the situation? I swear, I've never seen this kind of TV before. Did you enter some kind of advanced intensive care unit? Thinking of this, I suddenly feel like crying without tears. How much does it cost? But looking at the other 6 beds in the room, he couldn't be sure of his thoughts. Hey. By the way, how did you get to the hospital before? I feel like I've been visiting my girlfriend, and on my way home, I was reading a novel while walking along the road. Then, I heard a piercing brake sound and felt like I was floating, losing consciousness. Fuck me. Turns out I was hit by a car and turned into a flying person. At this moment, Chen Hao was attracted by the sound on TV. Yesterday, the Lord-level monster Black Crown Golden Eagle suddenly appeared over our base city, causing multiple passers-by to be injured. All injured have been sent to the hospital for treatment, and the cause of the incident is under investigation. Extreme Martial Arts School and Thunderbolt Martial Arts School have also dispatched God of War level experts to assist the military in investigating the incident. So far, the accident has not caused any fatalities. Let's take a look at the accident scene. Then there was a scene of the accident on TV. The monster did not enter the base city this time. Our base city has a powerful laser weapon protection system, and even king-level monsters dare not approach at will. Our defense weapons are sufficient to protect the safety of our base personnel. In the subsequent reports, Chen Hao did not listen. In fact, when he heard about the Extreme Martial Arts School and Thunderbolt Martial Arts School, his mind went blank. These 2 names are too familiar to him because they were already present in the novel he was reading before, and he also understood what kind of world he was in. Isn't this the platinum novel I was browsing while walking, Devouring the Starry World? I heard it has also been adapted into anime recently. As an old bookworm in his past life, he had a great love for Tomato-Do's novels, especially when he was in school. He spent all night chasing after the stars, 9 Cauldrons, and Pan Long. Unfortunately, after starting work, the time spent reading novels sharply decreased. Previously, I only wanted to reminisce about the memories of the past, but I didn't expect to be hit by a car in this world. He is the only son in his family, and he also has a girlfriend who is about to get engaged. He has just renovated his house. Thinking of these, he feels extremely uncomfortable in his heart. After finally ending his 30 years of being single. My girlfriend is okay, she hasn't gotten married yet. Although she may be a bit sad, without me, she will have another life. But what about her parents? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel twisted like a knife. If there were instruments testing, it would be found that Chen Hao's brainwaves were very chaotic at this moment, and a strange memory suddenly appeared in his mind. Nirvana, RR virus, isolated life in orphanages, high school graduation, average martial arts talent, average academic performance, did not get into college, high school graduation, found a temporary job, on the way to work, was hit in the head by falling glass from the sky, and then lost consciousness. Although these memories were simple, they were very profound, and after being impacted by them, Chen Hao fainted again. After an unknown amount of time, Chen Hao regained consciousness and looked at the ceiling with both eyes. After a long time, he let out a long breath and had already accepted his fate. Take it as it comes. If one's parents know about their own situation, they certainly hope to live well in this world. But if given the opportunity, he must return to his own world, which is also his deepest obsession, and then he buried this idea deep in his heart. At this moment, Chen Hao slowly regained control of his body. He pressed the call button at the bedside, and soon a doctor in his 30s walked into the ward with a young nurse. The doctor walked up and said, "You're awake. Don't move around yet." Then he gently touched his injured area with his hand and asked, "How do you feel? Do you have any special feelings?" Chen Hao's mouth twitched and said, "There's no special feeling, it's just a bit painful." The doctor was taken aback for a moment and calmly withdrew his hand, saying, "Oh, it's okay then. Pain is a normal phenomenon, after all, it's on the head. So far, it seems like there shouldn't be any other major problems." Chen Hao felt a bit helpless in his heart, and the little nurse behind the doctor showed her eyes outside, with a hint of a smile in her eyes. The doctor quickly put away the embarrassment in his heart and explained to Chen Hao, "Yesterday, you and the other 6 patients were sent to our hospital. After emergency treatment, the other 6 patients have been discharged from the hospital. Only you were placed in the ward for observation because you were hit in the head." Later, with some sighs, he said, "You are also lucky. The glass fragment that hit your head was not large, so there was only a slight concussion and the fragment scratched your head, almost like getting a bottle of wine on your head. Are you going to continue hospitalization?" "Of course, because this is an accident, your medical expenses will be borne by the base city government." Chen Hao thought for a moment and asked, "Doctor, can I be discharged from the hospital now?" The doctor did not show any unexpected expression. "Your body is not in any serious condition and can be discharged at any time. I thought you would have a concussion, but based on your current condition, your symptoms are very mild. You should go home and rest for a few days, and you should recover." "Okay," Chen Hao responded directly, "could you please help me with the discharge procedures? I want to go home and rest." The doctor nodded and said, "Sure, let Xiao Zhang bring the discharge certificate later." Finally, the doctor instructed Chen Hao to go home and rest before turning around and leaving the ward. After a while, the nurse who called Xiao Zhang walked in with a discharge certificate and handed it to Chen Hao. "Sir, this is your discharge certificate." At this point, Chen Hao had already taken off his hospital uniform and put on his clothes from yesterday. After thanking the nurse for a few words, he left the ward with a discharge certificate. At the entrance of the People's Hospital in Ian District, Chen Hao looked at the unfamiliar street and the unfamiliar scene, feeling a bit confused in his heart. Then he shook his head, recalling his own location, and turned to walk towards home. Newcomers and new books hope for everyone's support. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Discoveries. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Discoveries. In the Nanan community, a young man stood at the entrance of the community, and Chen Hao looked at the familiar yet unfamiliar real estate. As a low-rent housing community, the buildings could not be compared to the bustling areas of the city. Outside, it appears to have gone through the vicissitudes of the Great Nirvana period. Apart from clean roads and relatively sturdy buildings, there are no advantages, and there is not even a person looking at the entrance of the community. Entering the hallway, Chen Hao grinned and realized that he lived on the top floor of the 36th floor, without an elevator, which really cost him his life. But this is the case in all the communities here. There are no elevators installed, and if you want to go up or down, you can only take the stairs. I remember the original text said that the electricity in the base city is tight and expensive. Following the stairs, Chen Hao slowly climbed upwards. Surprisingly, after climbing more than 10 floors, he didn't feel too tired, and even his breath was just a slight gasp. Then he understood that the physical fitness of ordinary people in the world was not poor, and it was already comparable to the level of ordinary athletes in previous lives. No wonder the distance from the hospital to the entrance of the community was a full 6 or 7 kilometers, and he walked all the way, feeling very relaxed. This should be the welfare brought about by the evolution of human bodies after the Great Nirvana. Quickly, Chen Hao arrived at the top floor and stood in front of his own room. He took out the key, opened the door lock, pushed it in, and looked at the room. No one had come. The room is not very large, with one bedroom, one living room, and an additional toilet, which is about 30 square meters. For a person, space can be considered very spacious. The disadvantage is that apart from a shaded window, there is no other place for light transmission. Fortunately, this window in the living room makes the house look less dark. Chen Hao walked to the only table in the living room, put down the key, sat on the nearby chair, and propped his chin with one hand to think. Since I have come into this world, if I were to live as an ordinary person and die of old age in a few decades, I would definitely be unwilling to do so. After all, I still want to return to my original world. No matter how good it is here, it is not my root, let alone a safe world. But recalling his predecessor's cultivation talent, Chen Hao felt very helpless in his heart. My predecessor graduated from high school for a year and earned money by working, but only saved less than 10,000 yuan. To rely on this salary to help oneself cultivate martial arts is simply a drop in the bucket. Besides, after getting injured, I probably won't be able to work in the next few days. After all, it's physical labor, and coupled with the fact that I haven't been able to recover from the injury, if I get tired, I'm afraid I won't be able to work in the future. It seems that my previous temporary job is also not guaranteed. Injured. Chen Hao's heart was suddenly stirred, and he recalled a recent TV report. Isn't this just the time when Luo Feng was about to take the college entrance examination, devouring the starry sky? At the beginning of the plot, Luo Feng still had 1 month left. I remember it was mentioned in the original work that a few unlucky people were injured at the time, and I'll go. Being emotionally aligned with oneself is one of those unlucky people. If I remember correctly, it seems that Luo Feng and his family also live in this community. However, more than a month later, Luo Feng will become a quasi-warrior, and then the Luo family move to Mingyue community. It seems that there is not much time left to hold Luo Feng's thigh. Although my predecessor knew the Luo Feng family, I was not familiar with them and was just a nodding acquaintance. Chen Hao was somewhat grateful that at least they were not strangers to each other, and their predecessors were not completely useless. They also did something right, which was to rent a house in this community. But thinking that Luo Feng and his family would be moving out soon, he became a bit restless. As a traveler holding the protagonist's thigh, although it may not sound good, he is really fragrant. Wei Wen's martial arts talent was also very poor, but as the good brother of the protagonist Luo Feng, he eventually became immortal and possessed eternal life. After Luo Feng transcends the cycle of reincarnation, he may also move into Luo Feng's small universe to continue his eternal life and become a safe winner in life. If I could hold on to Luo Feng's thigh, not to mention immortality, becoming a universe level should not be a problem, right? The universe level has a lifespan of 100,000 years. 100,000 years is enough to find one's own opportunities. The premise is to live, thinking about the Golden Horn monster crisis, the space exploration team, and even the special features of Earth discovered by the giant axe. The actions of the 5 giants on Earth were a wake-up call for Chen Hao. The Earth is too dangerous and he must leave early. After resting for a while, Chen Hao picked up the key and went to the rooftop terrace, which was also divided into several pieces. In some places, iron wires were hung, clothes and blankets were hung, and in others, some vegetables were planted. This piece of land in Chen Hao's house is clean and has nothing else. Chen Hao walked to the edge of the rooftop and looked down at the entire base. A sense of pride and trembling arose, and he was truly unwilling to be ordinary. I must become a warrior. Thinking about it, I started the basic training that had become unfamiliar. Although I tried hard in the 3 years of high school, I didn't even meet the standards of a junior student during these 3 years. With the daily work fatigue after graduation and the feeling discouraged, my predecessor no longer engaged in basic exercise. Of course, the main reason is due to physical work, which makes it easier to fatigue. After returning home, there is no spare energy for exercise. Therefore, the method of exercising has become relatively unfamiliar, and over time, he gradually found the feeling of exercising in school martial arts classes. After all, I also trained hard for 3 years back then, and many basic training movements have become instincts of the body. An hour later, Chen Hao looked at himself, sweating profusely. He twisted his hands and shook them a few times, feeling a bit helpless. He hadn't exercised for over a year, and no more exercise had much effect. Not meeting the standards of junior students, even if they cannot enter the martial arts school, they can only use the most common exercise methods taught by the school, which is moving and slow in exercise efficiency. In fact, Chen Hao recalled the memories of his predecessor and realized that besides his relatively poor talent, there was also a deficiency in his body. After all, my predecessor was an orphan, and it's already great not to be hungry in an orphanage. It's simply unrealistic to want to eat that nutritious food. Especially in this high martial arts world, where warriors have privileges, the government can still take care of these orphans, prevent them from being displaced and starving to death on the streets, and establish specialized orphanages to adopt them, providing them with free and compulsory education. As a government, it has done its utmost in benevolence and righteousness. Even globally, China has done the best in this regard after the Great Nirvana. After all, before the Great Nirvana, the concept of the jungle was promoted abroad. However, after the Great Nirvana, this ideology abroad not only failed to converge, but also intensified, and the situation of orphans became even more miserable. Chen Hao was also fortunate to still live in this country. However, this also resulted in the orphanage where unless his talent was very outstanding and a bit ordinary, he would disappear from the crowd, and his predecessor was one of them. Chen Hao sighed and slowly walked downstairs to his home, where he sat in a chair to rest for a while. After a while, he felt that his stomach had begun to sing. He got up and opened the cupboard. He looked inside and saw that it was empty. A manta came out. Only a few potatoes were left in the corner. He could not afford electricity. Of course, there was no household appliances such as refrigerators. Chen Hao reached out to pick up a few potatoes. As soon as he picked up a potato, a virtual image suddenly appeared in front of him. Unprepared, he was startled and swooshed backwards, dropping the potato in his hand to the ground. And the image in front of him also disappeared, and Chen Hao, who was in a state of shock, did not see clearly what the sudden appearance of the image was. Startled and uncertain on the face. Is it because of a severe concussion in one's own brain? Those quacks didn't detect it. Suddenly, an idea suddenly appeared in his mind, which made him a little excited but also very nervous. Could it be that his golden finger had just been triggered? Thinking of this, he quickly approached the kitchen cabinet, recalling the scene just now, and grabbed his hand towards a potato. At the moment when my hand touched the potato, there was indeed a flash of light in front of me, and a virtual image appeared again. Chen Hao fixed his gaze and found that the virtual image was an icon, but after he put down the potato in his hand, the image disappeared again. Then he continued to repeat the action of picking up the potato, and the image also appeared again. Chen Hao has now confirmed that his chance, the golden finger cheat, is likely to be awakening. But although he awakened this golden finger, which is the virtual image in front of him, he had no idea how to use it specifically. Helpless, I could only focus my attention on the image in front of me based on some past experiences and online insights. With the concentration of attention, the virtual image in front of me gradually became clearer, and finally became a symbol like a stove and a card. Seeing the effect, he refocused his attention on the symbol of the stove and noticed that it slowly blurred into a vortex. Then, 9 blank circular positions appeared in the vortex, and finally it completely stabilized. Looking at the 9 blank spaces, Chen Hao hesitated and glanced at the potatoes in his hand, thinking to put them in a blank space. Then he realized that his hand was empty, and the potato suddenly disappeared without a trace. A potato appeared on the panel, and his mind focused on the position of the vortex. He thought about clicking on the position of the vortex, but the panel remained motionless. Then he continued to pick up the potatoes from the cabinet and put them in other positions. The potatoes also appeared in other blank spaces, but unfortunately there were only 5 potatoes in the cabinet, which also included the ones that fell to the ground. Chen Hao took a breath of strength. Whether it was a success or a failure, he just looked at it once, and focused on clicking on the vortex symbol in the middle. 5 potatoes suddenly disappeared, the vortex symbol disappeared, but a potato with a fresh and greatly changed appearance appeared. Before Chen Hao could even be pleasantly surprised, a tired feeling surged in his heart, and he thought that after taking out the potatoes, they appeared in his hand out of thin air. However, it made him feel a little flustered. After synthesizing 5 fist-sized potatoes, they turned into a watermelon-sized potato that looked very fresh. Looking at the big potato in his hand, Chen Hao was pleasantly surprised and instantly realized that it should be a synthesis function, consuming his own energy. Since potatoes can be synthesized, can other vegetables be synthesized? Can even other items be synthesized? After feeling his mental state, he let go of his plan to immediately synthesize other items. Then he shifted his attention back to the virtual image, thinking about returning, and the virtual image returned to the initial state of the stove and card symbols. Then Chen Hao focused his attention on another card symbol, but to his surprise, the card remained indifferent. No matter how hard I tried, there was no new movement, and I couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. But when I saw and thought about the function of the stove symbol, I felt very excited. At least I didn't get nothing. Tired from exercising on the rooftop and the fatigue of synthetic potatoes, plus his injury was not cured, after eating a little manta casually, he came to the bedroom and lay down on the bed and slept soundly. The new book has just opened, and I hope everyone can support it. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Experiments. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Experiments. Upon waking up, Chen Hao felt as if he had been separated from another world. Everything in front of him was not illusory, and the spirit that had been consumed yesterday had also regained its fullness. However, he once again felt the hunger in his stomach. Getting up and getting dressed, washing up for a while, I saw the potatoes on the table. My eyes lit up, and I picked up a kitchen knife to cut the potatoes into several pieces. Then, I put them in a steamer and started steaming. Time flies by, and after about half an hour, the potatoes have turned yellow and emitted a strong fragrance. The aroma emanating from opening the lid of the pot made him drool a bit. After all, potatoes nowadays are cultivated through nutrient solution. As for pure natural potatoes, even the living space is very tight now. How could there be land to grow potatoes? The food supply in the base city is almost all soilless cultivation. This is also thanks to the technological support among the many relics after the Great Nirvana. Otherwise, it would be impossible to raise hundreds of millions of people in the size of the base city without sufficient land. The combination of soilless cultivation technology and extraterrestrial technology has perfectly solved this problem, but there is no need to expect the taste of food. The potato synthesized by Chen Hao has a much better taste compared to the ones grown without soil that he bought himself. Chen Hao quickly took the potatoes out of the pot, put them on a plate, and served them on the table. Although it was a bit hot, he still swallowed a watermelon-sized potato in less than 5 minutes, completely eliminating it. Eat all the potatoes, hiccup. The fullness of his stomach made him feel a full sense of happiness. Because in the memory of his predecessor, he had never tasted such fresh potatoes before. In order to save money, he always bought those kind of delicious vegetables to eat, and potatoes were no exception. He was eating fresh potatoes for the first time, and even felt that they were even more delicious than the potatoes he had eaten in his previous life. Recalling the memories of his predecessor, Chen Hao couldn't help but feel a little emotional. In this world, the survival of the lower class is not easy. After finishing his meal, Chen Hao sat in a chair and began to think about his future path. Since I have a golden finger, the most important thing now is to understand where the functional limit of the golden finger lies. Although it only has one synthesis function, you need to try and explore whether it can synthesize all items or only plant-like ones. Later, Chen Hao found his bank card with his wallet and arrived outside the community. After walking for over 20 minutes, he arrived at a supermarket and instead of making crazy purchases, he made a rational selection. I bought 3 fruit knives, 3 kitchen knives, and then bought several vegetables before returning home. After returning home, Chen Hao placed the vegetables on the table to the side, and then he took out a fruit knife. With a movement in his heart, a virtual image similar to a computer screen appeared again. This time, he was not busy lighting the symbols for the stove. Instead, he lit the card symbols. To his surprise, the card symbols moved this time. A picture image of a fruit knife appeared in the card, and a line of text appeared on the card. A low-quality knife forged from iron, carbon, molybdenum, manganese. Quality. Not meeting A1 level. Looking at the subtitles on the card, Chen Hao's eyes lit up. Is the purpose of the card to identify? And this appraisal is detailed enough to list the composition and forging method of the knife. It seems that in the future, this function can be used to identify things you don't know. Don't forget that there are many relics and unknown objects on Earth. As for the quality display, it has not reached A1 level. In my opinion, this A1 is probably not an A1 level weapon in the extreme martial arts school, but rather a planetary level weapon, which is an A1 level alloy weapon. From this perspective, let alone this inferior fruit knife, even if it is an S-level weapon on Earth, it is estimated that it can reach the A1 level. As for whether there were any other functions, Chen Hao couldn't judge. Then he picked up the kitchen knife and the virtual image on the card changed again. A line of subtitles also displayed. Poor quality cutting tools, materials. Iron, carbon, nickel, manganese. Mechanical forging and rolling forming quality. Not reaching A1 level. Then Chen Hao picked up another tomato, and the subtitles on the card changed again. Tomato earth herbaceous plant fruit, edible, without nutritional value, without cosmic energy, can satisfy the stomach item level. Not reaching A1 level. Chen Hao found that using cards to identify items consumed very little mental energy, so he had a great time playing and almost checked all the items in his home. However, the appraisal results are all of ordinary quality, which is also normal. How could there be treasure-level items in his poor working home? Next, let's experiment with this synthesis function. Chen Hao took a look at the virtual image in front of him, which is very similar to a 3D virtual panel. Let's call it a synthesis panel in the future. Chen Hao placed 3 fruit knives into the synthesis panel and clicked the vortex synthesis button, feeling a bit tired. Then he looked at the small knife that was synthesized, and the blade on it shimmered with a faint cold light. Chen Hao took out the small knife with some curiosity, not sure if it was due to psychological effects, feeling a chilly chill emanating from it. He picked up the kitchen knife and pointed it at the tip with a small knife. With a hiss sound, the tip of the kitchen knife fell off, and Chen Hao was surprised because he did not feel too much resistance. It seems that the chill he felt before was not due to psychological effects, but rather the quality of this small knife, which has truly been elevated to a higher level. He evaluated the knife and the result was also displayed on the card. Ordinary knife made by special means, it cuts iron like mud quality. Not reaching A1 level. Chen Haoqiang suppressed his excitement and began experimenting one by one. He found that as long as two identical items were placed in the synthesis tank, they could be synthesized, but the changes after synthesis were not too significant. If 3 items are placed in the synthesis tank for synthesis, the quality of the items will be improved by 1 level. For example, potatoes are cultivated from a culture medium to become natural, pollution-free, and authentic potatoes. The combination of 4 to 8 items does not show significant changes, similar to the combination of 3 items. Only when 9 items are combined will the items undergo a qualitative change again, and the change is significant. It is difficult to determine the specific changes without specific comparison. Looking at the item he had synthesized, Chen Hao suddenly burst out laughing and said, "I'm finally going to release it." It took him a long time to calm down. Chen Hao tidied up the things on the table, and with the composite panel, he knew his future would never be too bad. Of course, if given the opportunity, he would still hug Luo Feng's thigh, but the idea was not as strong as it was at the beginning. After taking a look at the house, Chen Hao packed up the synthesized things and ate some of the fruits. He began to think about what he should do next. The most important thing at present is to search for treasures that are useful for one's physical fitness. All he can think of are the spirits of plants and trees, gene potions, and so on in the original work. Unfortunately, I cannot obtain these by myself, so I can only rely on synthetic panels for self-reliance. As for the raw materials, I need to search for them myself. Chen Hao doesn't have a computer at home, and the phone he uses is also outdated and unable to access the internet. Perhaps this is also a compromise of his predecessor's despair toward society and life. Chen Hao locked the door when he went out and walked down the stairs to the downstairs. It was already around 9 o'clock in the morning, and most people had already gone to work. There were not many pedestrians on the road to the community. As a recent tenant who has just moved in, Chen Hao is not very familiar with most people. The reason why he met Luo Feng's family is still because he attended the same high school as Luo Feng. The two met when they were at school, and when they first moved in, they even had a face-to-face meeting with Luo Feng, so they can be considered to have met Luo Feng's family. After all, I can also be considered a senior of Luo Feng, and of course, there is also Wei Wen. It's just that Chen Hao doesn't have much contact with the two families, and since he goes to work every day and comes back exhausted, he doesn't have the mood to socialize. Therefore, in the community, I can also be considered a little transparent. After leaving the community, Chen Hao went to an internet cafe according to his memory, but there were not many people inside the cafe. After all, devouring the world is not like in the past life, where there are crises, so not so many people are obsessed with online games and the like. Of course, due to the fact that most people cannot afford electricity and computers are considered luxury goods for ordinary people, there are not many home computers, so the business in internet cafes is still good. Chen Hao walked into the internet cafe and arrived at the bar. Take out your ID card and pass it to the front, saying, "Hello, please open a machine for me." At this moment, the network administrator lifted her head from the computer screen and saw the ID card handed over by Chen Hao. She reached out to take it and brushed it on one side of the machine. "Well, you can log in by yourself. It's 5 yuan an hour, and the beautiful woman plays with you for 50 yuan an hour. The account number is ID number, and the password is the last 6 digits. Chen Hao's mouth twitched and he said, "Your sister, the internet is not cheap in any world." Then he shook his head and said, "No need, I can do it alone." After retrieving his ID card, he found a machine and sat down, turned it on, and then logged into the website. After typing in the words, medicinal herbs that enhance physical fitness, many search results appeared on the screen. However, there were very few official websites on them, and most of them were related to Chiba. Therefore, he still held a skeptical attitude towards the authenticity of the content. In his opinion, there are several results that are somewhat reliable. He is more familiar with ginseng, Polygonum multiflorum, and Salvia miltioriza. And all the medicinal materials in these have to be purchased from pharmacies. After searching for a while, Chen Hao found that there was not much information online about improving physical fitness. Even if there is most of the information, it is not very reliable. It seems that anything that has a slight connection with the warrior is hidden information, and it is really difficult for ordinary people to come up with it. Since he couldn't find any useful information online, he had no intention of staying at the internet cafe. Soon, he left the cafe and came to a nearby Chinese medicine store. After entering the pharmacy, a staff member in his 30s walked over. "Hello sir, may I ask what medicinal herbs you would like to purchase? Do you have a prescription? We have a complete range of medicinal herbs here. If you want to take medicine, we can offer free decoction for you." Chen Hao nodded calmly and said, "I just feel a bit weak recently, so I want to buy some ginseng, Polygonum multiflorum, and Salvia miltioriza to supplement. Do you have these here? Can you introduce them to me?" The clerk's eyes lit up as he listened. "Hello sir, we have ginseng, Polygonum multiflorum, and Salvia miltioriza here, all of which are wild ginseng, Polygonum multiflorum, and Salvia miltioriza." Seeing that Chen Hao couldn't deny something, the salesperson quickly added, "Of course, there is also a variety of ginseng, Polygonum multiflorum, and Salvia miltioriza that can be planted. Which one is specific? You need to choose it yourself. However, the price varies depending on the year, and the prices for wild and planted products are also different. Of course, the most effective one is definitely wild, and the higher the year, the better the effect, and the higher the price will definitely be." Seeing Chen Hao's attentive expression, the salesperson continued to introduce, "Look at the ginseng planted here for 3 years. One plant costs 100 yuan. If it's wild, the price is about 300 yuan per plant. The Polygonum multiflorum here is slightly cheaper, but it also costs 50 yuan per plant. If it's wild, it also costs 100 yuan per plant. As for the ginseng, I suggest that you don't need to use it. The efficacy of ginseng and Polygonum multiflorum is better than that of ginseng, and the price of ginseng is not cheap. There are too few people planting it." Chen Hao thought for a moment and asked, "I just want to buy some home for stewing soup. Is it okay with what you have here? Planting it is also okay." The salesperson knew in his heart that he was once again deceived by online news, but he was also surprised because there are many different uses of ginseng and Polygonum multiflorum. There have been reports online that fresh people participating in Polygonum multiflorum can improve their physical fitness. But the salesperson sneered. "Do you want to improve your physical fitness with this thing? I'm afraid this thing needs to be eaten by the weight." But the salesperson still smiled and said, "We also have fresh ones here, but the price of fresh ones is the same as the price of dry ones." "Sir, what kind do you need?" Chen Hao was somewhat surprised and said, "How could this be? Isn't the dried medicinal herbs more expensive, and fresh ones cheaper?" The salesperson smiled and said, "That's before the Great Nirvana. After all, before the Great Nirvana, ginseng will also lose its medicinal effects over time. Therefore, it needs to be dried and processed professionally to ensure the storage of its medicinal effects. After the Great Nirvana, due to the change of the RR virus, the planted ginseng is not much worse than the wild ginseng, and ginseng grows extremely fast, so ginseng prices are relatively cheap, and there is no need to dry and process it, even if the processing price cannot go up." Chen Hao felt a bit speechless after hearing this, feeling that he was ignorant. "Alright, let me have 12 ginseng plants and 10 Polygonum multiflorum plants first. Just plant them fresh, he said. The salesperson quickly wrapped the two and placed them on the counter. Hello, the total cost of ginseng is 1,200 yuan, and the total cost of Polygonum multiflorum is 500 yuan. The total cost for your patronage is 1,700 yuan. Although Chen Hao felt heartbroken as he looked at 2 packets of medicinal herbs, he still happily swiped his card to pay. Let's use this ginseng to supplement it first. If it works, I will come to your place to buy it when the time comes. The clerk handed over the receipt and said with a smile, sure, welcome to our store next time. Please take your time. Chen Hao quickly walked home with the medicinal herbs, feeling a bit impatient in his heart. After all, it all depends on this matter. After returning home, Chen Hao closed the door, put the ginseng and Polygonum multiflorum on the table, then called out the panel, looked at the fresh ginseng in his hand and said to himself, first identify it, don't pretend to be a white radish, hey hey. I appraised it and looked at the results that appeared on the card. Ginseng born in 3 years. It has tiny nutrients and does not contain cosmic energy, which can replenish some qi and blood. Polygonum multiflorum born in 10 years contains weak nutrients, has no cosmic energy, and can replenish a little qi and blood. Chen Hao shook his head a bit. The planting was indeed unreliable, even if it was a great nirvana with cosmic energy nourishment. If his age was too short, the effect would not be very good either. Now he can only rely on synthetic panels. Subsequently, Chen Hao placed 9 ginseng plants on the 9 empty spaces of the composite panel, and after lighting a vortex, a dizzying sensation surged in. Chen Hao shook his body and sat down on the chair, holding on to the armrest for a moment. He didn't expect his mental energy to be so exhausted. Chen Hao focused his attention on the panel, at which point the 9 ginseng plants had already disappeared. And in the middle appeared a very plump ginseng plant, about the size of an ordinary carrot, looking fresh and delicious. Chen Haoqiang suppressed his dizziness and took out the ginseng. Suddenly, a refreshing fragrance surged into his nose, and he placed it on the panel to begin the identification. The card also revealed information. Centennial ginseng herbal plants, containing some cosmic energy, can enhance the physical fitness of flesh and blood below the star level, and have mild medicinal effects. The quality has not reached A1 level. Chen Hao was very surprised to see the appraisal results. This is the rhythm of evolving into a spirit of grass and trees. Then I picked a ginseng root and put it in my mouth, chewed it a few times and swallowed it. Suddenly, a cool and comfortable feeling surged throughout the body, even the dizziness in the mind seemed to have calmed down a lot. As the coolness faded, Chen Hao's body also became hotter and hotter. Hurriedly arriving on the rooftop, following the basic exercise method, he began to exercise his body. After about 20 minutes of exercise, he felt the heat in his body subside. Then Chen Hao felt his body, as if it had taken off its thick shackles, much lighter. Feeling the effect of ginseng, Chen Hao's eyes suddenly lit up, and the feeling of subsequent weakness that he had experienced during his previous exercise was also gradually weakening. Feeling a little excited in my heart, I said, it seems that when I was a child, my body fell into a deficit. It should have been compensated for by ginseng a lot. If I eat the whole ginseng plant, I estimate that my body's deficit and the dark wounds left by previous exercise will be repaired. Thinking of this, Chen Hao was extremely excited in his heart. Then he returned to his room and glanced at the Polygonum multiflorum placed on the table. It seems that one spiritual power is not enough to synthesize 2 9-grid combinations. If you want to synthesize multiple times, you probably need to wait for your strength to improve. Unfortunately, you are not a spiritual master, nor do you have the talent for spiritual masters. Otherwise, the spiritual power consumed by the 9-grid combination would definitely not have such a significant side effect. Chen Hao knows the truth that too much is better than too much, so he will slowly eat ginseng bit by bit. Instead of eating the whole plant, you might not be able to withstand the medicinal effects of ginseng. After putting away Polygonum multiflorum, he took a shower, rested for a while, and after eating a random meal at noon, he started taking ginseng for exercise again. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Encounter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Encounter. It has been a week since Chen Hao took ginseng for 100 years, and the entire ginseng plant has been completely consumed by him. He can feel that his body is full of vitality, and the previous shortcomings and dark wounds have disappeared, and his skin has become white and tender. Chen Hao punched out, and there was a loud explosion in the air. Chen Hao was both surprised and delighted that he had definitely exceeded the assessment criteria for a quasi-warrior. He needed to go to the martial arts school to test the specific amount. After checking the time, it was around 3 p.m. and I estimated that it would take me half an hour to reach the martial arts school. If I were to run at full speed, I wouldn't even need 10 minutes. I could just jog over on my own, as I have just finished my exercise and don't need to warm up for the assessment. Half an hour later, in front of the main entrance of the Extreme Martial Arts School in Ian District, Chen Hao looked at the 4 big characters above the door with a complex expression. The Extreme Martial Arts School. Stop, non-martial arts school students are not allowed to enter. Just as Chen Hao sighed, a warning from the guards came. Hello, I'm here to take the beginner's test, Chen Hao said without moving forward. The guard looked at Chen Hao, who was already considered an elderly young man, and was somewhat surprised, but there was no surprise either. After all, in the era of nationwide martial arts practice, anyone's first wish was to become a warrior. Just go to the testing area. Chen Hao nodded and said, Thank you for the reminder, I know. Can you not know? When he was in high school, he didn't make more than 1 trip, but the results were all very miserable. Every time, he was unqualified, and even after graduating from high school, he was still unqualified. The last 198 kilograms data was so ironic to his predecessor at that time, which made him a laughingstock in the class and a very small group of non-martial arts students. But all of this has become history, starting from today. There aren't many people in the testing area, after all, most of them come for the test in the morning, and very few come in the afternoon. The receptionist was a young girl in her 20s with a beautiful appearance. Hello, may I ask if you want to take a strength test? The receptionist did not show any unusual colors due to Chen Hao's age, but was very polite. I need to conduct a strength test and give me a form. I am not a martial arts school student yet, and I will be conducting a student assessment at the same time. Chen Hao is quite familiar with this set and fills out the registration quickly before coming to the boxing test machine. Looking at the punch target, Chen Hao took a deep breath, kicked his right foot hard, and his body leapt out like a cheetah. Then, he punched the punch target with 2 sounds. One was the sound of him hitting the punch target, and the other was the sound of a sonic boom after punching. The screen of the punch strength testing machine displays data .1236 kg. Ah! This. The work tester was stunned directly. Is this the hidden boss? For her, a quasi-warrior is a big shot. Chen Hao was not surprised. After all, he didn't know how to use his strength skills. He probably didn't even have as much strength as a beginner in the martial arts school, but he was still very excited. The path of martial arts begins at present. Could you please help me turn on the speed tester? Chen Hao didn't wait and stood in front of the speed tester. Ah. Okay, please wait a moment. The tester quickly approached the speed tester and opened it. Sir, it's ready and you can start at any time. Chen Hao took a few deep breaths and rushed out like a sharp arrow, almost leaving a shadow in place. As he stopped, he let out a beep, and his speed was displayed on the screen, staring blankly at the testers. Chen Hao walked over to take a look. 30.6 m/s. Sure enough, his speed test was very good, and the rest was the nerve reaction speed test, which was the least confident for him. After all, he had not received any training and was unfamiliar with it, and he had not even practiced basic body methods. Compared to the strength tester and speed tester, the neural reaction speed tester is much smaller, but the instrument is much more complex and precious. At the front, there is a Gatling-like exit, but with dozens of gun barrels. Chen Hao walked up to the front of the barrel and stood inside a circle with a diameter of 3.6 meters. Then, the edge of the circle emitted a hazy red light, and he knew it was a test induction laser. "Sir, are you ready?" the tester asked directly after seeing Chen Hao standing up. "Ready." The tester heard the sound and pressed the red button, "Start." As soon as the words were spoken, the barrel of the tester began to rotate, spraying red light from the muzzle, mixed with some red rubber bullets. The speed and trajectory were disorderly, and one could only dodge based on reaction. It was necessary to avoid bullets as much as possible without touching the red light. Chen Hao was a bit flustered. After all, this was the first time. Previously, if only junior students were assessed, this item was not included. After all, junior students were assessed for physical fitness, while quasi-warriors were assessed for nerve reaction speed. This is for free warriors to test, and Chen Hao also wanted to test his own strength, so he could only avoid based on his feelings. Seeing the red light coming, Chen Hao quickly turned around to look for the gap between the red lights. At this moment, a bullet hit him fiercely, causing him to slow down. Then a red light hit him, and then 3 more bullets hit him. Chen Hao's heart was filled with excitement, as he dodged the red light and ignored the bullet. It passed quickly in a minute. The drip tester finally breathed a sigh of relief, and Chen Hao's tense nerves relaxed. In just 1 minute, he was sweating profusely, and his breathing was also very fast, consuming a lot. "Sir, you have been hit a total of 59 times and touched the red light once, only 1 line away from being qualified as a quasi-warrior." Chen Hao was not disappointed when he heard this. After all, he didn't even know the basic body method. It's normal not to have broken through, and breaking through is a miracle. "Hello sir, your current strength fully meets the standards of our senior students in the martial arts school. Would you like to join our martial arts school?" The receptionist at the front desk looked expectant. Chen Hao was not surprised by this. Just as he was about to answer, a bald man in black walked in. Chen Hao looked up and found that the other person's gaze contained a compelling aura. "Hello, I am Jiang Nian, the head of the Extreme Martial Arts School. Your strength is very good. I wonder if you are willing to join our Extreme Martial Arts School. Hong, the head of our martial arts school, is the world's top expert. Joining our martial arts school will provide you with the best training." The bald man in black spoke first. Chen Hao's expression moved slightly. It turned out to be him. Later, the panel appeared, and the appraisal results appeared. Jiang Nian, a human on Earth, was 37 years old. Talent: none, realm. Apprentice level 3, skill. Basic body method advanced, basic knife technique specialized, 9-fold thunder blade not beginner, first level introduction to overlord blade. Chen Hao's heart was filled with excitement. Unexpectedly, Jiang Nian still had a unique skill to suppress the box. It was probably not easy to wield a powerful sword. Just as he was about to close the panel, he noticed that the panel suddenly changed on one side, and a line of writing appeared. There were no replicable talents, but replicable skills. Basic body method at the micro level, basic sword method at the specialized level, and the first level of the powerful sword. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Advanced Students. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Advanced Students. Looking at the composite panel in front of him, Chen Hao was excited and excited. At this moment, he realized that his panel not only had identification functions, but also other functions. This sudden appearance of a new feature caught him off guard. Replication. From the current situation, the copied object is a skill class. I'm not sure if there are any other types that can be replicated. Of course, one thing can be certain is that items cannot be copied. I have identified many items myself in the past and have never had the function of copying. Looking at the young man in front of him who was both dull and excited, Jiang Nian nodded to himself. Sure enough, I managed to suppress the other party with my own words, and the title of the head librarian is indeed very useful. Despite the emergence of the previous fusion identification function and the emergence of new replication functions, Chen Hao did not hesitate. Although he was also extremely excited at this moment, the most important thing now was to handle the situation in front of him and not be seen as abnormal. Hello, Master Jiang, my name is Chen Hao. It's an honor for me to become a senior student of the martial arts school. Thank you very much for your invitation. Chen Hao responded calmly after regaining his senses. Great, you made the right decision, and you won't regret your decision at this time in the future. Jiang Nian was very satisfied with Chen Hao's answer, and then turned to the front desk. Xiao Jing did a good job. I'll leave the application for Chen Hao's senior student certificate to you, and there must be no mistakes. I'll take credit for you later. The receptionist's face flushed with excitement, almost incoherent. Yes. Yes, I will definitely not make a mistake, thank you, the owner. Looking at the excited front desk girl, Jiang Nian was also very satisfied with her in his heart. After all, without timely reporting from the other party, perhaps I would have missed a genius like Chen Hao. Even in base cities across the country, it is rare to see a 19-year-old quasi-warrior. This can be considered a relic of the sea, and he has found it himself. Chen Hao, after your student ID is processed later, you can swipe your card to enter the martial arts school. I will be waiting for you at the senior student side on the 3rd floor. I will introduce you to some senior students, and you can practice more when you have free time. This will help you improve. Jiang Nian gave some advice and then left the testing office. As the owner of the Extreme Martial Arts School in Ian District, Jiang Nian has many things to do every day. If it weren't for outstanding talents like Chen Hao, he wouldn't have personally stepped forward. At most, let one steward take a look. With the form she had filled out earlier, the receptionist quickly processed Chen Hao's advanced training certificate. Hello Mr. Chen, this is your advanced training certificate from the martial arts school. Thank you very much for joining the martial arts school. I have also made great contributions. Do you have time? If you have time, I would like to treat you to a meal as a gesture of gratitude. She handed over Chen Hao's advanced training certificate. Chen Hao took his senior student ID card, flipped it over and carefully examined it, and gave a faint smile to the other person. This is your own ability, and it doesn't have much to do with me. I still have something to deal with now, maybe I have time in the future, he said. A hint of disappointment flashed in the front desk girl's eyes upon hearing this. Then she smiled coquettishly and said, all right, my name is Zheng Yin, and this is my phone number. If you have time, give me a chance to express gratitude. Zheng Yin handed over a note with both hands, which had a phone number written on it. Okay, goodbye. Chen Hao took the note and glanced at it before putting it into his pocket. Nodding, he gestured to the other person, greeted them, and then left. After leaving the testing room, Chen Hao couldn't hold back his emotions anymore. Call up the synthesis panel and look at the card, only to find it empty. My heart couldn't help but thump for a moment. Shouldn't it have been an illusion before? He had originally planned to go home first, but now he was being disturbed by the panel and hurriedly walked towards the main entrance of the martial arts school. I swiped my student ID in front of the door. The gate of the martial arts school opened, and Chen Hao walked in leisurely. Entering the martial arts school from a distance, he saw the student building. After all, the student building is considered the largest building here. The entire martial arts school has tens of thousands of students, and they usually go to the martial arts school and the student building for training. Chen Hao wore his senior student ID card on his chest and entered the first floor, only to find it very spacious, with at least a few hundred people inside. He didn't stop, but walked upstairs. Some students also saw him, but after seeing the senior student ID on Chen Hao's chest, their puzzled eyes turned into envy and understanding. Ha! Who is that? I haven't seen it before. Are you a senior student here? I haven't seen him among intermediate students before. He should have been recruited from outside, right? Chen Hao didn't pay much attention to the discussion below. After walking down the stairs to the second floor, he noticed that there were fewer people inside, and less than 100 scattered people. You should know that the space on the second and first floors is equally large, and when the number of people decreases, the hall becomes more empty. His appearance also caught the attention of intermediate students, but unlike junior students, they understood in their hearts that since they didn't know each other, they should be senior students recruited by the martial arts school from outside. After Chen Hao arrived at the third floor, he found only a dozen or so scattered people inside. It seems that the museum owner Jiang Nian is explaining something to some of the students. As soon as Chen Hao came up, he was noticed by the other party. Jiang Nian's eyes lit up and he laughed heartily. Chen Hao, you're here. Here, let me introduce you to him. He's 19 years old and his physical fitness has reached the standard of a quasi-warrior. He needs to exercise his body skills a bit and pass the quasi-warrior assessment without any problem. They are all senior students in the martial arts school. Let me introduce them to you. As Jiang Nian introduced the names of these senior students, Chen Hao followed suit and greeted them. When he heard about Yang Wu, he couldn't help but take a closer look. After all, there were more appearances and descriptions at the beginning of the plot, but unfortunately, there was no news in the later stages, which was much worse than Wei Wen's treatment. Little brother Chen Hao, I have met all the big brothers and sisters. If there is anything inappropriate in the future, I hope my brothers and sisters don't argue with me. Chen Hao sincerely clasped his fists and bowed to the surroundings. He, Chen Hao, right. My sister's name is Tong Yun, and in the future, I'll cover you up here. After Jiang Nian introduced more than a dozen senior students here, a graceful and alluring woman in a white practice suit with a wheat skin color smiled at Chen Hao, her eyes full of teasing. Ha ha ha, I'm talking about Miss Yun. You're taking a liking to Chen Hao. Shouldn't you want an old cow to eat tender grass, right? But that's also true. As the saying goes, a third-year-old woman holds a golden brick. Maybe Chen Hao's younger brother is better than you. If you really want to pursue him, your brother Yang supports you. Yang Wu stood aside and looked at Tong Yun, teasing him with some amusement. Ha ha ha, Sister Tong, you have a more accurate eye. Sigh. It seems that Sister Tong has a sense of belonging, so we have no hope. Get rough, what are you thinking? I'm getting close to the new students, okay? Everyone's thoughts are dirty and dirty. Tong Yunbai glanced at the other giggling people. Chen Hao's younger brother, don't listen to them being careless there. If you have any questions in the future, you can ask us. We won't hide anything. Yang Guo ranks among the top 3 advanced students in the martial arts school in terms of strength. If you ask him for advice, you won't be at a disadvantage. Thank you, Sister Yun, Brother Yang. If there is a need, I will definitely not be polite. Chen Hao faced the enthusiastic crowd, and the sense of unfamiliarity in his heart quickly disappeared. The atmosphere here in the martial arts school was really good. The coding software is not very user-friendly. If there are any typos, please forgive me. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Copying. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Copying. Chen Hao communicated with many students while calling up the panel. It was only when he saw the replication option appearing again in the appraisal data that he felt relieved. Looking at the appraisal data. Yang Wu, a human on Earth, 24 years old, with no talent or realm, skilled in basic sword techniques, replicable, and basic body methods, replicable. Seeing Chen Hao getting along with many students, Jiang Nian breathed a sigh of relief in his heart and then turned around to leave. After all, he still had many things to deal with, and he had only been here before to wait for Chen Hao. Chen Hao looked at Jiang Nian as he left, knowing that the opportunity was rare, and directly gave him the command to replicate Jiang Nian's basic body method. Subsequently, a white light flashed past and covered the basic body technique entering the micro level. The white light then interwoven and transformed to form a card, displaying the basic body technique entering the micro level. When Chen Hao looked at the appraisal data of Deng Jiangyan again, the replicable basic body method had been replaced by the replicable one. Chen Hao knew in his heart that although everyone's skills could be replicated, each skill could only be replicated once. With the formation of his skills, Chen Hao once again felt the feeling of being emptied, and his face became somewhat pale. Then he squeezed out a smile and said goodbye to the crowd in front of him. Brothers and sisters, I have something else to deal with here. I will come back for formal training tomorrow. Seeing Chen Hao's face turn pale and the few people laughing, although they had this question in their hearts, it was not a good thing to have a deep conversation, so they didn't ask much. Okay, we'll wait for you tomorrow. Come early tomorrow, can you please help me out? Chen Hao left the martial arts school and quickly returned home. He rested in bed for a while, and the feeling of being hollowed out only eased a lot. He didn't expect that both replication and fusion require a lot of mental energy. Looking at the successfully copied basic body method entry card, he was still very excited in his heart. Under caution, he did not use it immediately because he did not know if it would cause mental stress after use. He decided to wait until his mind recovered before using it. As it was getting late, Chen Hao tidied up and had a simple dinner before returning to his bedroom bed and falling into a deep sleep. On May 8, 2056, at 5 a.m., Chen Hao, the punctual biological clock, woke up and sat up. His spirit had also returned to its original state, which made him feel much more at ease. Although he had previous experience using the fusion function, which caused a lack of mental power, he later recovered. After all, this is another function, and Chen Hao dare not be careless. Fortunately, this time it is the same as last time. It seems that as long as the mind is not subjected to certain irreversible trauma, it should be able to recover. He was a bit curious about what would happen if his mental strength was insufficient, but he didn't try to be someone who didn't have a suicidal personality. Chen Hao estimated that the panel either pulled itself out of place or could not be replicated or fused. After waking up, Chen Hao tidied up and had a simple breakfast. He went to the balcony, pulled out the panel, looked at the skill card in the symbol, and silently used it in his heart. The card instantly turned into a white light and disappeared on his forehead, followed by a massive memory appearing in his mind. Regarding the cultivation memory and experience of basic body methods, from beginners to beginners, it seems that Jiang Nian has seen the experience of fighting and avoiding monsters time and time again, gradually making him feel like he is there. After an unknown amount of time, Chen Hao's body also began practicing basic body techniques with the memories in his mind. From the initial bitterness to the later unpredictable changes, the speed also became faster and faster, and Chen Hao was always immersed in the experience brought by memory and experience. When Chen Hao regained his senses, he found that more than an hour had passed. He checked his phone and found that it was already past 6 o'clock. His clothes were soaked in sweat. A large amount of sweat is evaporated, forming a thin mist around oneself, which really gives a feeling of cultivation. Feeling his own state, Chen Hao gave a bitter smile. It seems that one must be prepared to use cards in the future. That is to say, one's physical fitness has reached the level of a junior warrior. If one were still a senior student, they would definitely not be able to cope with such a large expenditure. Although it had only been over an hour, Chen Hao felt like more than 20 years had passed. His current body style was vastly different from an hour ago, and his basic body style was like a leisurely stroll to him. Within an hour, I reached the level of detail displayed on the card. This kind of penetration is not like the penetration technique used by Yang Wu in the testing room, but rather the actual penetration technique used in battles with monsters, which was honed by Jiang Nian through life and death for over 20 years. Chen Hao was somewhat grateful that after using the card, he did not have a significant mental load on himself, but instead had higher demands on his physical strength. Simply put, to turn skills and experiences into physical memory, a lot of practice is necessary, but skill cards have increased the efficiency of this practice by thousands of times or even higher. Moreover, this is just a basic body method, which can be sustained at the warrior level. There may be advanced secret skills in the future, but for myself at this time, it is still a bit far away. Returning home, Chen Hao took a beautiful shower and changed into clean clothes. Today I am going to the martial arts school to learn basic knife techniques. I think Yang Gu and Tong Jia will definitely not be stingy. After all, this thing can be learned by junior students. By the way, I will also copy a skill that is proficient in basic knife techniques, so that I can make up for my shortcomings in terms of power. It is easy to pass the quasi-warrior assessment on June 1st, but the actual combat assessment for the warrior will only be available on August 1st. If you can replicate a basic sword technique at a specialized level, you can quickly reach a high level of depth in your sword technique, enough to use it at the level of a warrior. The previous practice consumed too much, and Chen Hao had to have another breakfast. When Chen Hao arrived at the martial arts school, it was already past 7 o'clock. Yang Wu and others have been exercising here for a while now. When Yang Wu saw Chen Hao, his eyes lit up and he said, "Chen Hao, this way." Chen Hao looked at Tong Yun waving at him and Yang Wu greeting him with a smile on his face, responding, "Yang Gu, Tong Jia, good morning, you came early enough." Yang Wu came to Chen Hao and patted his shoulder. "You're really calm, kid. I thought you would come over this morning at dawn," he said. Chen Hao felt a little embarrassed and rubbed his head. "I'm used to it. After waking up in the morning, I exercise at home. Hasn't I changed my habit yet?" Tong Yun nodded at the words and said, "Yes, habits can't be changed in a short while. Just take it slow. But do you want to learn swordsmanship or body techniques today?" "If you want to learn body techniques, mine is okay. I need to consult Yang Gu about swordsmanship. His swordsmanship is even praised by the owner of the museum. Then let Brother Yang teach me the knife technique first. I have never practiced the basic knife technique before, and I want to practice it to increase my physical strength skills." Chen Hao thought for a moment and made a choice. Before Yang Wu could agree, a sarcastic voice came from beside him. "Kong has physical fitness but no skills. When encountering a monster, it's just a matter of dying. Don't let the monster scare you and wet your pants." Chen Hao glanced indifferently towards the direction of the sound, only to see a young man who was slightly younger than him, surrounded by a few people standing together, with a high and aloof attitude, looking at him with a disdainful expression. Before Chen Hao could retaliate, Tong Yun became angry and said, "Zhang Haobai, are you mentally ill? What's the point of our conversation having anything to do with you? Mind your own business and get out of the way. Don't stand in the way, I want to get beaten up and help you." Zhang Haobai. Looking at the nervous young man in front of him, Chen Hao suddenly thought to himself, "Isn't this the first little boss we, Luo Feng, are facing?" Although the book does not say what his ultimate outcome is, his fate is probably not good. After the disaster of imprisonment, waiting for him is definitely not a comfortable life. For such a small character, Chen Hao didn't care and could crush him at any time in the future. He casually identified Zhang Haobai as a human on Earth. 18 years old. No natural talent. There is no realm. Skills, basic body method introduction, basic knife method introduction. Looking at the appraisal results of the opponent's whiteboard skills, Chen Hao was speechless. Who gave you the courage to speak such nonsense? At the level of Zhang Haobai, it is estimated that in 2 to 3 years, the basic knife and body techniques will not reach a proficient level. Just thinking about it, it's okay for the children of wealthy families to eat, drink, and have fun, but if they were to endure hardship and practice, it would probably cost their lives. Zhang Haobai, right. It doesn't matter whether I'm going to die or not. You don't even have the qualification to die. Do you not take a bath to take care of yourself? Do you have the qualification to talk about others? You really have a big dog face. Chen Hao's tone was very calm, not too passionate, but it sounded annoying. Zhang Haobai didn't expect a newcomer to dare to lose face like this, especially Tong Yun, a stinky girl who was still staring at him fiercely. She angrily glanced at the two of them, turned around, and left. Let's wait and see how long you can be arrogant. She insisted on having her uncle give them some color to show. Chen Hao watched as the other party left with harsh words and turned around, feeling a bit speechless. You're already 18 years old, still so childish. It can be said that a 30-year-old Hedong and a 30-year-old Heshi cannot deceive young people into being poor, but also show their momentum. Losing without losing in battle exposes the nature of bullying the weak and being afraid of the hard. Having confirmed that Chen Hao was going to learn the art of swordsmanship, Tong Yun went to the side to practice on his own, which was just a small episode of a quarrel and could not attract the attention of others. After all, everyone who came to the martial arts school would make the most of their time to practice. I also look forward to passing the assessment of a quasi-warrior. Life is short, and the golden age for martial artists is between 18 and 30 years old. Especially for advanced students with poor family conditions, they all want to become quasi-martial artists and improve their family's conditions. Bring Chen Hao to the weapon rack, where various weapons such as knives, guns, swords, and sticks are fully equipped. This is the Blood Shadow series of war knives. Please take a look at which model you want to use. I'll use this one, he said, picking up a Blood Shadow 1 series war knife, which looks thicker and more efficient at chopping. I'll use this one, Chen Hao said as he pulled out a Blood Shadow 2 series war sword, which looked somewhat like a Tang straight sword, but was wider and thicker than a straight sword. He casually struck it twice, which was quite convenient. Seeing that Chen Hao had chosen his weapon, Yang Wu didn't say much. He then gestured, there aren't many moves in the basic sword technique, it's just a practice from the basic sword technique before the Great Nirvana. In the end, it's just 8 moves. Cutting, splitting, wiping, and teasing. With Yang Wu's guidance and demonstration of his moves, Chen Hao quickly learned the basic sword techniques. After all, there were not many sword techniques. It's just 8 basic movements. Of course, all 8 basic movements are necessary for exerting force in sword techniques. Yang Wu nodded as he saw Chen Hao learning the 8 movements with ease. Well, that's about it. The first thing you need to do now is to familiarize yourself with them and practice them to the standard. When you can use all 8 moves in one go, it means you have entered the basic swordsmanship level. If you can freely combine these moves, then you have reached a proficient level. As for going further, you need talent. When you casually use these moves, you can reach the best combination level. As the owner said, this swordsmanship also reaches the level of specialization. As for the more advanced level, it is perfection. Shake your head. I heard that some of the basic sword techniques of the God of War have not reached the level of perfection. Generally, if the basic sword techniques reach the level of specialization, one can practice higher level secret scripts, such as the world's first sword technique secret book, Ninefold Thunder Knife. Although most warriors will buy this secret book, very few have been trained. After looking at Chen Hao who was listening, he grinned and said, but this matter is still far from us. Let's become a martial artist first. He then patted Chen Hao's shoulder. Practice on your own side first, and I'll go over and move on. If you don't understand, just call me out. Chen Hao was moved as he watched Yang Wu leave freely. Yang, thank you. Yang Wu waved his hand, but did not turn around. Chen Hao hid this gratitude in his heart, and when he would repay him in the future, he would pull out the panel and look at Yang Wu's identification data inside. Silently reciting replication of basic knife techniques, a white light enveloped me, and I became proficient in this basic knife technique. Slowly, the white light formed a card. The card displays several words. Proficient in basic knife techniques. Chen Hao was a bit surprised, his spirit was just a bit tired, and he didn't feel like he was taken out yesterday. Suddenly in my heart, it seems that the level of skill also determines the amount of spiritual power used. I have more speculations about the replication and fusion functions, and it seems that I still need to continue exploring the functions of the panel. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Surprise. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Surprise. Chen Hao did not immediately use the card, but instead practiced the 8 moves of the basic knife technique on his own. Time passed quickly, and without realizing it, it was already noon. Chen Hao did not stay at the martial arts school to eat, greeted Yang Wudong and the others, and left the martial arts school. I didn't immediately return home, instead I came to a simulation model store. Hello, may I ask what you need? As soon as Chen Hao entered the store, the salesperson greeted him with a standard professional smile. Do you have a simulation model of the Blood Shadow 2 series swords here? The salesperson was taken aback and said, yes, of course we have them here. Although they are all models, the materials are not as good as the Blood Shadow series, but their weight and shape are no different from the Blood Shadow series. The materials are also made of special steel formulas from before the Great Nirvana. Of course, to prevent accidents, we did not cut these imitation knives, and they are extremely sharp after cutting. Looking at the salesperson's Blood Shadow 2 series simulation tool, I tried it on and felt it was pretty good. How did it sell? How much does it cost? Before the Great Nirvana, the materials used in our simulation model could be used to produce special cutting tools and drills. Although prices have decreased significantly now, the Blood Shadow series uses sufficient materials, with each drill costing 500 yuan. Seeing Chen Hao wanting to purchase, the salesperson immediately began to explain the advantages of their product. What if I buy a few more? Chen Hao looked at the salesperson with a funny expression, still explaining his strengths. I don't know how many you want to buy, sir. The clerk was taken aback by the words and then became happy again. It seems that this order today can earn quite a bit. If the price is reasonable, give me 12 pieces. My maximum discount is 50 yuan. If you buy 12 items, then I will give you a discount of 50 yuan per item. What do you think? Okay, just pack it up for me and I'll take it with me. I was eager to verify my ideas and didn't waste time bargaining, so I paid the money very happily. Sir, do you need us to deliver the goods to your doorstep? The salesperson looked at a large package of hundreds of pounds of goods and quickly asked Chen Hao. I'll just carry it myself. Then I reached out and picked up the hundreds of pounds of package on the ground, walking away. My goodness, is the other party a warrior? Even if they're not warriors, they should be quasi-warriors. The salesperson saw that Chen Hao easily picked up hundreds of pounds of things and widened his eyes in fear, muttering to himself about Chen Hao's identity. After leaving the mold shop, he didn't linger outside and quickly returned home with 12 knives. Arriving inside the house, closing the door, pulling out the panel, looking at the fusion page, 3 simulation props were placed in the synthesis position. Then he silently recited in his heart. Synthesis. The newly synthesized battle knife, although its appearance has not changed much, Chen Hao can still feel the difference. With a sudden movement of his mind, he took out the newly synthesized battle knife, which still had a Blood Shadow 2 style and was no different from the one he had practiced using in the morning. Unlike the simulation prop that had not been sharpened, the new battle knife blade reflected the light of Yulon instead. Immediately, the new battle knife was identified. Ordinary knives, synthesized by special methods, can break through the defense of apprentice-level monsters. Sure enough, the new battle blade is no different from the genuine one. If it were to match the level in the martial arts school, it should be an A1 level battle blade. Chen Hao's eyes were filled with joy. With his current mental strength, he was able to merge effortlessly. This synthesis did not consume much mental energy, and it seemed that he could continue to synthesize. Directly activate the 9-grid synthesis, look at the already placed 9 positions, and silently recite. Synthesis. The synthesis button is not moving at all. What's going on? Subsequently, Chen Hao conducted another triple synthesis, but this time it was successfully synthesized. 9-grid synthesis can allow ordinary garbage ginseng to obtain some of the effects of plant spirits, so 9-grid synthesis will definitely undergo a qualitative change. The reason why it cannot be synthesized is probably related to one's own spiritual strength and strength. It seems that he can only give up the 9-space composition of the saber for the time being, but he should go on the 3-space composition. After 2 times of composition, Chen Hao couldn't help laughing when he saw the 4 identical blood shadow battle blades. However, it's not over yet. The next important moment is when 3 newly synthesized battle blades are placed on the fusion panel, silently reciting synthesis. Then the fusion button began to rotate, and the 3 battle blades disappeared, with a new red long sword appearing in the middle. The shape has not changed, but the difference in texture can be clearly seen. I don't know if the level of this battle blade doesn't matter, but the panel can be taken care of directly. Ordinary knives, synthesized through special methods, can break through the apprentice's level for monster defense. If I remember correctly, this is definitely an A4 level war sword. Of course, it is at the level of the extreme martial arts school. The A5 level war sword of the extreme home requires more than 6 million, so the A4 level will definitely not be less than 1 million. It can be said that after a while, my assets have exceeded 1 million, but unfortunately, this type of item cannot be seen unless I become a warrior. Otherwise, with one's current strength and identity, taking this war knife for sale would be unpredictable. Indeed, while devouring the world, one still wants to become a warrior. Even if one becomes wealthy without the status of a warrior, one should be cautious and sneaky. Although the war knife cannot be monetized, there is no problem using it for practice. With a thought, Chen Hao frowned and said, I didn't expect the weight difference between A1 and A4 level war knives to be so significant. A1 level swords can weigh up to 100 pounds, but A4 level combat feels like it weighs 500 to 600 pounds. If you practice it yourself, it may not be as easy as A1 level swords. If you practice on your own, you can only make do with A1 level ones for now. Perhaps my own strength has improved a lot, except for the unsuccessful synthesis of the middle 9 squares. I didn't feel tired these few times. Then I found the Polygonum multiflorum I had bought before. Since ginseng can be synthesized in 9 squares, Polygonum multiflorum should not be a problem. Looking at the placed Polygonum multiflorum, I silently thought to myself. Synthesis. A magnified Polygonum multiflorum appeared in the middle of the panel, with a faint humanoid appearance. And a week ago, the 9-grid synthesis that made me want to be immortal and die did not cause too much burden on my spirit this time. It's just a feeling of fatigue, a bit like the state after intense morning activities. By the way, let me verify. Centennial Polygonum multiflorum, a herbaceous plant, contains a small amount of cosmic energy, which can improve the physical fitness of apprentices below the peak of life. Its medicinal effect is mild and can be taken directly. The synthesized Polygonum multiflorum is very white and pure. It was cut into a piece of root and thrown into the mouth, chewed a few times before swallowing it. Suddenly, a stream of heat surged from the stomach and quickly rushed to the whole body. Chen Hao didn't dare to waste time and came to the rooftop with his A1 sword in hand. Then call out the panel, look at the basic knife skill card in the panel and say, Use. The skill card turned into a white light, rushing into his mind, followed by Yang Wu's memory and experience of practicing basic sword techniques. With the reception of memories, Chen Hao began to practice. From being awkward and unfamiliar at the beginning, gradually, his knife skills became more and more proficient, and in the end, he was surrounded by a cold light. As I practiced, I went from completing everything in one go to combining the moves in the 8 swordsmanships. As I became more proficient, the memories and experiences in my mind came to a sudden halt. Unfortunately, Chen Hao looked at the time and less than 10 minutes had passed. Yang Ji's basic sword techniques have not undergone combat, but have only been practiced and become proficient through hard work. If you want to achieve true proficiency, you may have to go to the wilderness for practical combat and combat. Although I feel a bit regretful in my heart, even this level of swordsmanship is enough to make up for my efforts. Eating Polygonum multiflorum seems to have exhausted its medicinal effects, not only replenishing the consumption from just practicing, but also improving physical fitness. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Luo Feng. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Luo Feng. Chen Hao didn't rest, but instead made a very awkward cut. Is this? Just now, I just wanted to integrate my body technique into my knife technique, but after I took out the knife, I felt very uncomfortable. Chen Hao stopped, furrowed his brows, pondering the incongruity of the knife just now. It seemed that it was not easy for him to integrate his body techniques into the knife technique. Jiang Yan's body technique was honed from slaughter, but Yang Wu's knife technique was accumulated through hard practice, and there is a significant difference between the two. If the two cannot be combined, encountering monsters in actual combat will definitely put oneself in danger. Chen Hao sighed inwardly. Although he had obtained the fusion replication panel, he also dug out the replication function of the fusion panel. But it's still a bit difficult to achieve success by relying on replication skills. This requires a lot of practice on your own, combining the two experiences together. It seems that it's not yours, ultimately it's not yours. If you want to turn someone else's experience into yours, hard practice is essential. Since that's the case, let's start with the integration of body techniques and sword techniques. After all, Chen Hao's body method has reached the micro level, and he can use the micro level body method to match his sword technique. Unfortunately, there is no monster to train oneself, otherwise I could have solved my current problem by killing monsters. Chen Hao tried for a long time but couldn't find a clue, so he stopped and looked at the time. It was discovered that it was already past 5 o'clock in the evening. Thinking that they didn't go to the martial arts school this afternoon, Yang Wu and his team may have some thoughts, but no matter what, they still hold good intentions towards themselves. With 100-year-old Polygonum multiflorum, Chen Hao does not need to consider the nutritional issues of his body. So after a simple dinner, he ran towards the martial arts school. As soon as I entered the martial arts school, I noticed an unknown increase in the number of people. With so many people, it seems that the school is over now. Students have a tight schedule and usually make the most of their time to practice martial arts. Unfortunately, their predecessors never had this opportunity. It's just that there are more people on the first and second floors, and when Chen Hao arrived at the third floor, he found that the number of people instantly decreased by more than 10 times. The senior students on the entire third floor did not exceed 3 digits and were clearly divided into 2 parts. There are 50 or 60 people on the side with a larger population, while there are only about 20 people on the side with a smaller population. Yang Wu and Tong Yun, on the other hand, are from the smaller group of people who have read the original work. They have also guessed the reasons for this, which should be the difference in social class, the opposition between the rich and the common people. When Chen Hao walked towards Yang Wu and the others, the person on the other side looked at him with an unfriendly expression. Chen Hao ignored them directly. After all, with his current strength, although he couldn't fully exert himself, even if they were combined, he probably wouldn't be able to beat them alone. Chen Hao sighed. Tong Yun had sharp eyes and saw him at a glance. He immediately called himself over. Tong Jie, Yang Gu, good evening. Good evening. Luo Feng, are you also there? Chen Hao greeted everyone and saw the young man beside Yang Wu, couldn't help but smile. This is still his first time seeing the protagonist. My predecessor only met Luo Feng a few times. Brother Chen. Different from Chen Hao's calm demeanor. Luo Feng was surprised. After all, he knew that Chen Hao was not even a junior student back then. A year ago, when Luo Feng was still an intermediate student, Chen Hao didn't even pass the entrance exam as a junior student. If it weren't for the other person living in the same community as me, I wouldn't have recognized him. Do you two know each other? Yang Wu looked at Luo Feng's expression with some surprise. Chen and I live in the same community, Luo Feng also realized at this moment. Since Chen Hao can reach the third floor, this indicates that the other party already has the strength of a senior student. Although I don't know how Chen Hao's strength improved, Luo Feng was also very surprised by the addition of an acquaintance. Since it would be better if you two knew each other, there's no need to introduce them. They're both our own people. Tong Yun looked at the two young people with jealousy in his heart. Such a young senior student and quasi-warrior is destined to have a bright future in the future, and if one cannot break through the martial arts in 2 or 3 years at most, they will have to get married and have children. After the pleasantries, everyone also seized the opportunity to exercise. To put it bluntly, in a martial arts school, it ultimately depends on one's strength. If one does not achieve success, everything will be in vain. Chen Hao took the opportunity to give Luo Feng an appraisal. Luo Feng, a human on Earth, 18 years old, natural talent, spiritual and mental abilities, apprentice level 9, not activated, replicable, skills. Proficient in basic body techniques, replicable, proficient in basic sword techniques, replicable. Looking at the appraisal results of Luo Feng on the panel, Chen Hao felt his heart beating rapidly. Can talents also be replicated? It seems that the copying function of the panel is really amazing. I don't know if my strength and spiritual strength are enough. Can it support the replication of the panel? Due to the sudden appearance of talent duplication, Chen Hao was somewhat absent-minded during his entire night of cultivation. The time will soon be around 9 p.m. Luo Feng seemed to have finished exercising and greeted the people around him. As he passed by Chen Hao's side, he greeted him and said, "Brother Chen, I'm leaving first. I still have classes tomorrow." "Ah. Well, okay, I'm back too." Chen Hao woke up from a dream when he heard Luo Feng's voice. "Brother Yang, Sister Tong, I'll go back with Luo Feng first. See you tomorrow." He greeted Yang Wu and Tong Yun and walked outside the martial arts school with Luo Feng. "Chen Gu, you are really amazing at transitioning from not being a student to becoming a senior student within a year." Luo Feng admired and was curious about Chen Hao's improvement in strength. "It's not that magical. In fact, I was also knocked unconscious by the glass during the last time a Lord-level monster invaded. After waking up from a coma, my physical fitness increased significantly. Well, yesterday I came to test it and found that my physical fitness had reached the level of a quasi-warrior. Then I was called in by Master Jiang, and I was still a bit puzzled." Chen Hao certainly wouldn't say that this was because he had eaten ginseng for 100 years, but what he said was not wrong. He did indeed increase his physical fitness after waking up from a coma. Luo Feng's mouth twitched for a moment, but he didn't expect Chen Hao to be one of those unlucky people. After listening, his eyes changed. He didn't expect that Chen's condition was very similar to his own, as his physical fitness skyrocketed after he fell into a coma. However, Chen's physical fitness had grown somewhat exaggerated. It seems that he is not a strange individual, but there is still someone like him. Then there was a hint of sincerity in the gaze towards Chen Hao. Chen Hao looked at Luo Feng's gaze and felt relieved. He knew that Luo Feng had already brainstormed on his own and did not need to explain too much. Both of them are advanced students, so they went home very quickly. In just over 10 minutes, they had already arrived outside their own community, and along the way, the two of them clearly got to know each other a lot. "Chen, see you tomorrow," Luo Feng said and quickly left. Looking at Luo Feng who was about to leave, Chen Hao pulled out the panel and gritted his teeth and silently said, "Copy." Then a white light came to Luo Feng's talent and began to change, eventually forming a card that was faintly visible. In the end, it stabilized. On the new card, there appears the handwriting of spiritual mindfulness. Apprentice level 9. Not good. At this moment, Chen Hao had a splitting headache, feeling like he hadn't slept for a month, and then an iron chisel stirred in his mind. Chen Haoqiang gritted his teeth and struggled back home. As soon as he closed the door, he suddenly fell to the ground. Looking at the talent card inside the panel, silently recite. Use. I lost consciousness. And the card turned into a white light, rushing into his mind. The white light dissipated, and a dark golden ball appeared in his sea of consciousness, as if feeling that the space of the sea of consciousness was somewhat narrow. Some fragments fell from the dark golden sphere, and mist appeared in the sea of consciousness, gradually expanding the space of the sea of consciousness and infiltrating into the whole body. At this moment, Chen Hao's body was also convulsing wildly, with veins bulging under his skin. Despite losing consciousness, his eyebrows still furrowed tightly. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Spiritual Minders. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Spiritual Minders. As dawn approaches in the Nanan community, the adults who need to support their families have already woken up. After finishing their meals, they have to work hard to support their families. In a room on the 36th floor, a figure lay on the floor, with its muscles bouncing violently. Chen Hao looked at his hands as if he remembered something bad, and couldn't help but shiver. It seems that yesterday's replication has reached its current limit, and in the future, I have a relatively accurate replication range. Chen Hao recalled yesterday's behavior, as if he had used talent fusion before losing consciousness. As my thoughts turned, I realized that my thinking seemed to be much faster than before. Is it the result of the fusion of talents from last night? Thinking of this, I couldn't help but pat my head. Why didn't I just identify others before I did? What a pig's head. Pull out the panel, silently recite to yourself, identify. Chen Hao Earth Race 19 years old talent. Spiritual Mindset Realm. Spiritual Mindfulness Master Apprentice Level 4, Extreme Apprentice Level 9, Martial Apprentice Level 2 Skills. Proficient in basic knife techniques and subtle in basic body techniques. Looking at the appraisal results on the panel, Chen Hao's face was filled with blood, and he made the right bet. Although I suffered a lot last night. But with the fusion of talents, not only does it completely restore one's spirit, but it also awakens oneself to the cultivation of a junior warrior level spiritual master. According to the appraisal results on the panel, his current warrior cultivation should be at the intermediate warrior level, but it gives him a feeling that he is a bit stronger than before. It should have been when my spiritual teacher woke up last night that I strengthened my physical fitness. If you were a beginner intermediate warrior before, then you are definitely a senior intermediate warrior now, with a fist power of over 3,000 kilograms. After calming down for a moment, I put away the panel and calculated my own financial situation. There are still many 100-year-old Polygonum Multiflorum, 1A1A4 level battle sword each, and with the basic body techniques at the advanced level, I have barely gained the ability to protect myself at this stage. I don't know if my fist power will exceed 4,000 kilograms after my first practice of genetic energy. Once the weight exceeds 4,000 kilograms, one's spiritual cultivation level can reach the intermediate warrior level, which will also enhance one's life-saving ability. Recalling the original work's gene energy cultivation method, the core is the 5 hearts sensing and absorbing cosmic energy into the sky. I also have an understanding of this, sensing cosmic energy and absorbing it through the palms, soles, and Baihui acupoints on my head. Then wait for the cosmic energy to seep into the body and undergo initial absorption. The scriptures inside not only introduce cosmic energy and induction methods, but also help quasi-warriors calm their minds and engage in meditation, so that they have the opportunity to sense cosmic energy in the air. However, as a spiritual thinker, especially at the junior level of a general, sensing is definitely a leader. Coupled with one's intermediate level warrior body, the danger should be extremely low. Do it as you think, and it's better to take action than to be tempted. Sit cross-legged, with your feet crossed, palms facing up, and place your hands on your legs in a 5-centered upward position. Gradually calming down, feeling the energy in the universe. As his attention focused on the palm of his hand, he slowly felt the elusive cosmic energy in the air. The sudden energy seeped through his head, soles, and palms, waking him up instantly. What is the situation? In the original work, Luo Feng meditated for a long time before sensing cosmic energy. However, for the first time, it took him less than 5 minutes to absorb it. Chen Hao was startled by the unexpected situation and woke up. Then on second thought, I realized that I was still different from Luo Feng. When practicing genetic energy, because one has already awakened their spiritual and mental abilities. At that time, Luo Feng was only a quasi-warrior. Has not awakened spiritual and mental abilities. Luo Feng awakened his spiritual and mental abilities during his time in prison when he was assassinated. Relying on the spiritual and mental power of a junior general, one is naturally more likely to feel cosmic energy than Luo Feng. Strike while the iron is hot, so once again calm down the mind and quickly sense the cosmic energy around the body. Above the 5 concentrated minds, an instinctive thought arises to absorb cosmic energy. The cosmic energy quickly passes through the 5 hearts and enters one's own body. The body cells quickly consume this trace of energy, and the whole body sends out a signal of hunger. The cosmic energy suddenly enters the body, increasing by more than 100 times compared to the initial speed. With the passage of time, Chen Hao's body is undergoing tremendous transformation, with skin, muscles, bones, and even deep-seated cellular particles undergoing life-level evolution. According to the original text, the first practice was because one's own cells were always in a state of hunger. So the absorption efficiency is the highest and the improvement is also the most significant. The physical fitness will also make a huge leap, and the whole person's consciousness will be immersed in this comfortable improvement process. It is unknown whether they can reach the level of a senior warrior after the improvement is completed. Observing the improvement of one's body, bone density, and muscle toughness in detail seems to break our usual understanding. Violation of energy conservation. After stopping absorbing cosmic energy, Chen Hao looked at the time and found that it was close to 12 o'clock. That is to say, during his first cultivation, he absorbed it for nearly 6 hours before his body fully absorbed it, which was 3 times longer than Luo Feng's. In the original work, Luo Feng practiced for the first time and absorbed nearly 2 hours, increasing his punching power by over 600 kilograms. And on my own, I need to increase it by at least 1,000 kilograms. Chen Hao felt that his physical fitness had indeed greatly improved. Although he didn't have a boxing test machine, he still had a synthetic panel. He silently recognized. Chen Hao, Human Beings on Earth, 19 years old talent. Spiritual Mentor, Apprentice Level 5, Extreme Apprentice Level 9, Realm. Apprentice Level 3, Skills. Basic Body Method Advanced Proficient in Basic Knife Techniques. This morning's promotion has indeed elevated me to a level. With just one punch, I estimate that it will be close to 5,000 kilograms. With a slight force, Chen Hao bounced up from the ground and looked at the cup on the table. With a thought, an invisible force acted on the cup. And the cup slowly floated up from the table, slowly drifting towards him, and finally landed in his hand. Spiritual and mental abilities are indeed very magical, more like superpowers compared to genetic abilities. First use of mental power. Chen Hao was naturally very excited, controlling the cup and constantly moving around him. Finally, the speed became faster and faster, and soon he became familiar with the conventional use of mental abilities. He then placed the cup back on the table. Looking at the time, it's almost 12 o'clock. Chen Hao rushed to the Extreme Martial Arts School. Swipe your card at the entrance to enter. Around noon, maybe everyone will go for lunch. So there aren't many people on the first and second floors. Even the third floor is empty, with only a few people. I saw that Yang Wu and his companions were not in the martial arts training hall. Chen Hao walked towards the fourth floor, which was a place frequently visited by formal instructors and instructors. There is a small room next to the staircase on the fourth floor. An old man is on duty in the room. Seeing Chen Hao walking in, he quickly spoke up, "What are you doing? Students are not allowed to enter here." Chen Hao looked at the old man in front of him. If I remember correctly, the other person's surname was Li. When Luo Feng first went up the 4th floor, he was also stopped by the other person, but Li knew that Luo Feng had passed the martial arts exam. So even without a quasi-warrior certificate, it still allowed Luo Feng to climb up the 4th floor, and I don't know if I have the same treatment as Luo Feng. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Shocking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Shocking. Hello Li Bo, my name is Chen Hao. I am a senior student of the martial arts school. I want to go up and test my physical fitness. Chen Hao stopped and explained to the old man in front of him. Li Bo looked at Chen Hao with some confusion and was about to refuse when a voice came from the martial arts training hall, "Is that Chen Hao?" "Li Bo, let him in." Upon hearing this, Chen Hao's heart moved. "Master, it's me." Then he smiled at Li Bo, pushed open the door, and walked in. The decoration of the martial arts training hall on the 4th floor is much more upscale than that on the 3rd floor. At this moment, only one person in the martial arts training hall was sweating profusely. The black bald mark is very obvious, and the state of the person in front of him indicates that Jiang Nian has been training for more than a while. Seeing Chen Hao come in, Jiang Nian stopped his movements and said, "Why do you think of going up the 4th floor, kid?" "I feel like my physical fitness has improved a bit, so I want to test it to see how strong my boxing skills have been. After all, my previous strength techniques were too poor." "Haha, you have just learned this basic swordsmanship, so you probably haven't made much progress in terms of power. You can only unleash your own power when you have mastered the basic swordsmanship, or even become proficient in it." Jiang Nian laughed upon hearing this. "Let's go to the boxing test machine and let me see how much your boxing strength has reached now." Jiang Nian secretly speculated to himself that during the last test, Chen Hao's full punch was about 1,200 kilograms. After only 2 days, it was estimated that he would grow by 1 or 200 kilograms. Seeing that Jiang Nian didn't take it seriously, Chen Hao didn't explain either. He stood up in front of the boxing test machine, adjusted his breathing, and then his body suddenly exerted force. The basic knife technique at the proficiency level completely integrated his body, and his spine was like a long bow. With a loud bang, the fist hit the target, causing it to shake violently. The display screen of the boxing test machine clearly displays a set of numbers .4786 kg. Jiang Nian was greatly surprised when he heard the commotion. Quickly approaching the punching machine. After seeing the numbers on the screen, I almost dropped my chin. 4,786 kilograms. Are you a damn monster? Jiang Nian looked at Chen Hao with shock in his eyes. Subsequently, Jiang Nian's expression became solemn and he said, "Have you practiced genetic energy? Where did you obtain the cultivation technique?" Chen Hao shook his head and said, "What method of cultivating genetic elements can I use? I haven't practiced before. It's just that since I woke up from my last coma, my physical fitness has skyrocketed a lot, and I found that I can feel a lot of things in the surrounding air. Last night when I came home, I accidentally absorbed these cool breath into my body. Then I felt that my body's strength had skyrocketed again, so I came to the martial arts school to test it. I also want to ask the instructor. What's going on with me?" Jiang Nian looked at Chen Hao with a complex expression, thinking that Chen Hao had obtained the method of cultivating genetic elemental energy from the Thunderbolt Martial Arts School or the military. Unexpectedly, Chen Hao relied on himself to cultivate his genetic abilities. This kind of genius is probably only heard of in the Great Nirvana. After the Great Nirvana, he has never heard of anyone who can successfully cultivate genetic elements independently. Success in cultivation without cultivation is not the key point. What is important is that the situation described by Chen Hao is so similar to the awakening of spiritual masters. He had already investigated Chen Hao's situation thoroughly and was not surprised by his previous mediocrity, until he was knocked unconscious by a glass a week ago. After waking up, there were no major health issues, so he was quickly discharged from the hospital. Unexpectedly, at that time, no, it should be that time, he had just awakened his mental and intellectual abilities. Having awakened my psychic power, I gained over 3,000 kilograms of genetic energy during my first practice. This is definitely a genius, and it's the kind of demon-level genius, combined with awakened psychic power. Chen Hao, have you awakened any other abilities? Chen Hao took out his key from his pocket, and then the key suspended in his hand. He then turned around the two of them and said, "Are you talking about this? I only realized this morning when I woke up that I could control the movement of things in the room, so I practiced at home all morning." Spiritual power. You are indeed a spiritual master. Jiang Nian looked at the young man in front of him, his tone full of emotion, but also very excited. He quickly approached the weapon rack, pulled out a few flying knives from the rack, and then quickly approached Chen Hao. "Come and try, how many can you control? Then control one of them. Strike the punch target." Chen Hao's heart twitched as he controlled several flying knives to dance. Then he frowned. If you control 2 or more flying knives yourself, it's a bit difficult to control. But for myself, the 2 flying knives are just right to fully unleash my imagination. In the end, he took control of one of them and slammed the handle of the knife into the punching machine, causing a piercing sound of sonic boom to burst out in the martial arts training hall. After a loud bang, the punching target trembled violently. The display screen shows a set of data .19144 kg. Looking at the data on the screen, Jiang Nian opened his mouth a few times but didn't make a sound. Although there was some speculation in my heart, seeing it with my own eyes was still very shocking. According to the data, the other party is truly the most gifted spiritual and mental teacher, that is, the spiritual and mental realm, which is 2 levels of physical level. I didn't expect a real genius demon to appear at the Extreme Martial Arts School in Ian District. I personally recruited it, probably the entire Jiangnan city. It's probably only 1 or 2. Chen Hao, hurry up and test your speed, and later, test your neural response. For Jiang Nian, Chen Hao now represents his contribution level. As long as Chen Hao is recommended, the contribution value he receives will definitely greatly enhance his strength. Maybe you can become a general-level warrior. Good owner. Compared to his excitement back then, although Chen Hao was equally excited in his heart, his face remained relatively calm. Soon, the assessment results came out. Speed .71m/s full marks for advanced warriors in the neural response test, with excellent junior generals. Looking at the score evaluation on the neural reflex testing machine, Jiang Nian was both excited and helpless. He had already realized that Chen Hao's physical state was not below him. After nearly 20 years of fighting, I was able to enter the humble realm. Jiang Nian admitted that he was feeling sour, but considering that Chen Hao has a bright future in the future, he is sure to make a significant contribution to the martial arts school. Under the anticipation of the future, Chen Hao's face turned red with excitement. He patted Chen Hao's shoulder and said, "With your current strength, my extreme martial arts school can completely allow you to join ahead of time. You don't need to go through the actual combat assessment of martial artists. I will report it now." End of this chapter.